everything else. I mean, like things like Disney Plus, are convenient for shit that you haven't seen or you want to, or new releases. But if you got a favorite, I say you might as well just put it in your collection.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
still waiting on fucking turtles, all right?
Yeah, everyone's been waiting on that.
Yeah, they have every shitty version of that movie out on 4K except the one that we want. It's a mess.
I'm like, they do? I'm like, did they
Yeah, the
really put the
mic
Michael
the
Bay on 4K? Fuck
the
that movie.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Film Asylum, where if you're crazy about movies, you belong here. We are your hosts, Colin Peters.
Hello, John Rashetter here. Yeah.
John, one day we'll get through this. And we don't have to.
You're him, huh? The Avenger. Killer of killers. But Colin, nice outfit. Not sure about the face, though.
Hey, this is all natural.
Sorry, it was
Dude,
a
I
bad
feel
Michael Wincott impersonation.
I'm
I
actually
feel like
happy that you went through the Michael Wincott impersonation and
I went
not the
there.
the Brandon Lee. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
I'm
that
not gonna lie, I am too.
face.
I was expecting a Brandon Lee, not
No,
Yeah.
I couldn't do that. I would like to see a deep voice competition between Michael Wincott and Patrick Warburton to see who would actually win.
Oh, fuck.
I still think Michael Wincott would win. I think he would still win.
If he smokes a
oh,
pack of camels like he does in order to get that voice, then yeah, probably.
oh.
Yeah, I see.
So to get this show started, we have another anniversary episode considering it is 2024. We are talking about pretty much throughout this year, majority of anniversary episodes that we have planned. And we're talking about the 30th anniversary of the 1994 movie The Crow starring Brandon Lee. This was written by James O'Barr, a comic book author. He created this story back in the mid to late 80s, I believe. Um, Out of a tragedy, actually, his fiance was killed by a drunk driver, and he like just dealing with his pain, he decided he was going to write this story, and he was an artist as well and came up with this comic book. And the premise of the story of the movie and the comic book are very similar, but the movie is about a man who witnessed his fiance killed in Detroit the night before Halloween, and by a group of gang members, which is in the city of Detroit, it was called Devil's Night, where a bunch of people usually, I think the real story about Devil's Night is people go into like abandoned crack houses and just set them on fire. Um, they actually said now that's changed and it's gotten a lot better, and they call it Angel's Night now.
Okay.
So, which is a good thing, obviously.
Yeah.
Yes.
But they used that as a catalyst in the movie to break forth the plot. And what happens is this gang breaks into a loft where Brandon Lee's character, Eric Draven, and his fiancee, Shelley Webster, played by Sophia Shinnis, were staying in. She was alone at the time, and she gets beaten and raped. And as he comes in from holding like a bag of groceries, he gets taken down immediately by a knife into his stomach, and he's helpless and trying to save her, and he just sees all these terrible things happen to her. And then they decide to finally shoot Eric Draven and throw him out of a window, and he is dead. And what happens is his soul cannot rest until he feels that vengeance has taken place, and this crow has the power to resurrect somebody who is just like so heavily driven with this revenge burden and burden of guilt that they can bring somebody back temporarily and complete a mission on Earth, and his soul will finally be at rest and be with his loved one. And that is the premise of The Crow.
Yeah, to put the wrong things right. But
So I first saw this movie, I think it was back in 1994. My cousin Jason was actually the one who brought it over. He was older and he liked having like a movie night with us here and there, and he knew I was a big fan of movies, and so this one night he came over. I had no idea about the movie, and I heard little rumblings in the background where he talked about Brandon Lee and said that this is like a movie you guys got to see. So as we're watching it, like, I was hooked instantly. I mean, there was like not one scene I wanted to take my eyes off of. And from beginning to end, I just fell in love with this movie.
yeah.
I thought it was so unique, so different. I loved the gothic feel. I liked the music, actually. It's not my type of hard rock soundtrack, but I really liked it. And I thought the music helped the movie move along and tell a story inside the picture. And apparently that soundtrack is known as like a classic movie soundtrack now, which is
Great
really
soundtrack.
surprising, and it's really cool. We don't get that anymore, which is kind of sad because it used to be a thing to look forward to movie soundtracks, and now they're not a thing. That's like a relic.
Yeah.
As weird as
This
it is to
movie
say.
introduced Stone Temple Pilots. I think this was the first movie that actually introduced that band to the foreground. And it was just a simple song on a tape deck track when the goons are driving away from blowing up a building. You actually hear Stone Temple Pilots in the background. They have another song, I think, in there too, but definitely brought a lot of bands into the fold.
Well, James O'Barr, I think he actually asked the band members personally because he did some writing for Spin magazine, and he said he pretty much did it just to get free records. but but he got to
Hey, I would do
know
it.
but he got to know some of the band members, and at the time he was also handing them out free issues of the comic book because he knew them going on tour got boring on the bus rides, and here the guys became fans of the comic books. And then when he said they were getting ready to do a movie, would you guys do me a favor and do a soundtrack? And it can't be a B-side, it has to be original, it can only be for the movie. And I don't think anybody denied him. I think they actually had more artists than they did what was actually on the soundtrack, but I think they got rid of some.
Okay.
I was like, honestly, the one song that stuck out to me was the Nine Inch Nails song. But that was like, you only got to hear a little bit of it when he's running over the top of the
Buildings, the
rooftop.
rooftops.
Mhm.
Yeah. But honestly, as I'm looking at this list, it's like almost a who's who of 90s rock. Cause like you got The Cure, you've got Stone Temple Pilots, you got Nine Inch Nails, you got Rage Against the Machine, you got Violent Femmes, the Henry Rollins Band, Pantera, Helmet. Here's a couple I've never even heard of. For Love, Not Lisa, Life Without the Thrill Kill Cult,
Yeah. I think that
Jesus
was
and Mary
wasn't that the
Chain?
band that was playing during the concert
Yes.
scene during the
I-
shootout? Okay, that was them. Okay.
You got Medicine, and then Jane, is it Cyberry, did I Can't Rain All the Time. So like that title track, I guess, that they used when she was playing that vinyl when she fell asleep was actually written from played by another band in the movie. If I could talk.
Actually, a little trivia about that song is Graham Revell, who does the orchestra score,
Mhm.
Which is a great score itself too. That's such an iconic sound itself. Like this
It is.
movie really is like one of those pieces where it's got like nice special effects. Like it's not as digital heavy. It's kind of aged, and some of the digital effects are necessary because of an
Sometimes.
incident. But we're talking about the movie right now, and everything. I remember hearing that the set designer, he actually made parts of burning buildings and parts of Detroit out of like cereal boxes and shoe boxes and painted them and used Christmas lights, and that was the main pieces of the set, which
Mhm.
was
That's
which was
actually really
pretty
cool.
it was really wild to
Cool.
find that out and to see how good they actually were at creating a set like that and being really practical. But Graham Revell was also the one who did that "Can't Rain All the Time" song on the vinyl.
Okay.
And it's not even really a full song. It's just kind of like here's like a couple guitars and some songs, and then in the movie the song does skip, but
Yeah, here's a lick.
yeah, and James O'Barr even said it's not a real song. Maybe they threw it in there because they were like, well, hey, this is kind of like it's Eric Draven's band song, so maybe it'd be nice to have that in as I don't know, like a tribute or whatever.
I know
Yeah.
you mentioned the first time you saw the movie, Colin. I had a very different experience. I first saw the movie when I was 7, and my parents were watching it in the living room, and I hadn't watched it from beginning to end. I walked in on them watching the movie, and it was the moment where it's Darla and Funboy getting high, and then they get interrupted by Eric Draven, and he starts shooting him. And I thought this guy was a villain. I thought that Eric Draven was a villain because he was getting shot repeatedly and he's not dying. I'm just like, what the fuck is going on right now? And then he turns the gun on Funboy, he shoots himself in the leg, and I thought he was dead right then and there, that he died from a gunshot wound to the leg. I'm just like, I'm going away. I'm leaving here because like this
and then it breaks
scary for me. I don't want to watch this.
And then it has some levity where Funboy goes, "Look what you've done to my sheets."
That was the line that actually freaked me out. And I thought he died right then and there. I'm just like, what the hell is this? I'm leaving. I don't want to watch this. And of course, I would like sneak a view, and I was like, why isn't this guy? Why is nobody killing this guy? Why is nobody killing him? And then, of course, years later, I would actually see the full movie in full context. And there was a summer where I would watch this movie on repeat in grade school because it had all those themes, because it had action, it had suspense, it had dealing with grief and loss and romance and everything all thrown into this short hour, 40-minute movie. And it became like my favorite movie, like I think like the 8th grade summer that I had. I'm just thinking, this movie moves at a breakneck pace. It doesn't drag at all. And that's like the one big praise that I have for this film. It doesn't drag. Even when you think scenes are going to drag, they don't, because they're essential to either character development or progressing the plot. And another thing I noticed is that there is very little exposition in this film. And that is a massive praise.
Jeff, do you remember your first experience?
Yeah.
Actually, it was with you.
I remember really?
Watching. Yeah, because you kept talking about it, and you're like, "Hey, have you seen this movie?" And I'm like, "No." And you're like, "We ended up watching it at your dad's place." Well, I think it was your grandparents' place at the time, but and
sounds about right.
Yeah, and I'm like, as soon as I watched it, I remember it kind of like gripped me, and I was like, "This was not what I was expecting," because I'm like, I expected like, all right, your typical action flick, this or that, but when you're watching it, like, yeah, there's a lot more heart to it than what is on the surface. So like you're going through it, like John was saying, you're getting all these emotions playing out as the movie's playing along. And it was just that character dealing with grief, coming back for revenge, and then literally just finishing his job and going back to the dead, where it was just like, wow, there's so much here. And I wish we would have got more of Brandon Lee, because he really stole the show. Even though he wasn't in it all the time for obvious reasons, I felt like his presence was so in the forefront that like I felt like he was in every scene.
Yeah, I think that was the big thing I took away from it. Was I didn't know who Brandon Lee. I didn't even know who Bruce Lee was. It was actually Brandon Lee that got me interested in finding out who Bruce Lee was. Okay. Which in his life, Brandon was actually trying to fight to not be known as Bruce Lee's son. Mm-hmm. Sad thing is, this movie really would have, I mean, it does, but I mean, because it's like time has gone on so much, unless you're an actual fan of The Crow, I think you still kind of have to refer to him as Bruce Lee's son. But I think even now, a lot more people are like, who's Bruce Lee? Which is sad, because Bruce Lee was like he has some really good philosophy quotes and um, quotes to live by, and just martial arts in general is just like an incredible like media form, if you want to call it that. And
Exercise
nobody had
routines.
nobody had martial arts movies like Bruce Lee. He was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
Brandon, I mean, like that was just the thing. Like I remember as a kid, I just instantly fell in love with Brandon Lee. Like it was different because you had, I think the like my favorite acting at that time for me was probably Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson in Batman.
Mhm.
And then like finding out later on that Keaton was a comedy actor, but knowing how Jack Nicholson could just go in and out of the Joker or in like crazy roles and stuff, I was like, that's acting. That was wow.
Yeah.
But and I got into like a lot of Arnold and Stallone films, like every other kid, and who had a dad,
Come on, Mel
around that
Gibson.
was like macho at that time, and we loved them, but it was with Brandon's performance though was just like holy shit. I mean it was just something that you could just instantly see from beginning to end. As soon as he came on the screen, it's mysterious. We didn't even see who he was. You saw some pictures of him in the movie, like
Yeah.
from the crime scene, because that's how it starts off. But you see Shelley suffering and the police there at the crime scene getting ready to take her away, and you're like, something serious has happened here. And then there's like a cloth going over the body that's laying on the ground. We don't know it's him. We don't know who it is.
Mhm.
All we know is that he's in a grave, and it's not until the little girl Sarah, who they watch, goes over to their graves and lays flowers on, that the crow comes over, lands on Eric's grave, and then that night is able to resurrect him. And you're like, what's going on here? And then
I
he's
love.
following the crow. The crow's this guide. It says, here, grab a pair of boots. Come to, here's your loft. Here's how you get in now. Like
Honestly,
here's a shirt. Here's your makeup. Here's pictures. Everything.
that whole scene of him being in the loft is such an impactful scene. Like you are actually there with him, feeling all that emotion, all that anger, all the frustration, all that pain, all in that whole one scene. And honestly, it made such an impact on me that it caught me off guard because you're like, dude, that's frightening. The fact that he had to relive all that in a matter of minutes. And like
Yeah.
now you got all your memories again.
And it's like physically painful. Like it's just like taking a toll on his body. And we find out later on, especially when he jumps out of the loft window, almost recreating his death fall,
Mhm.
that he grabs the broken glass on part of the window that he falls out of is this big circle. And when he grabs onto like the rim of it, there's all this broken glass there, and it cuts his hands, and you see the blood go back and it heals his hands. But these
Yeah,
memories and the pain that Shelley went through, he still feels that.
for sure. And it's just a simple visual tale. Like I know there was supposed to be the Skull Cowboy in this movie, and he wasn't. He was there kind of to provide exposition, but the crow, or I should say the raven, because they were ravens, they weren't crows. Those things
No,
were
they were real crows.
huge.
No,
I,
they were. They were crows.
I thought they were ravens because from what I was seeing, because that bird, those birds that they used were huge. And like, there's no way that is a crow. That is a massive raven.
There was like a special wrangler, and I remember watching an interview with him, whoever the wrangler was, because for like the first three movies, I think they used the same birds
Yeah.
for
Oh
the
wow.
first three. Yeah.
Big fucking
I'm
bird.
And
sorry for them.
and
Ah!
and and James O'Barr had even said that they were like very well trained, and he said they were probably more intelligent than some of the actors.
Well, they're smart birds.
Yeah,
Crows and ravens are
crows are
incredibly
very
smart
smart
birds.
birds.
Yeah, they can solve puzzles. They can find food very easily. They can even communicate.
Yeah, they know if you feed them,
Mhm.
they'll contact other crows and say, "Hey, if you go to like Colin Peters's house, he'll feed you in the morning." And then they'll like find things like sticks or Nerf darts and little things and leave them on your front porch. And it's like their way of giving gifts.
They can mimic words. I mean, they're maybe not as as talented as maybe some parrots are, but fun little fact. The Raven, story by Edgar Allan Poe, which is featured in this movie, is that it was originally going to be about a parrot, not a raven. And thank God it was a raven, because a parrot would have just came off silly.
Yeah.
It would have came off silly. So, but yes,
see a
crows and
colorful
ravens are
parrot.
capable of mimicking speech and communicating that way. But going back, like leading up to the loft and the pain and the blood coming out of his hands, there's another great visual that I really love is when Sarah's going to the graveyard, she has no money, so she takes flowers from other grave sites to lay at Shelley Webster and Eric Draven's tombstone. She gives a bundle of flowers to Shelley and only one to Eric. Just in that one moment, you realize she had a better relationship with Shelley than she did Eric. She might have loved them both, but you could tell that she spent a lot more time with Shelley and had a bigger bond with her than she did with Eric.
I also kind of view it as like a male versus female sort of thing. Like, like if you were to give, like, very rarely do you ever give a man flowers. You give a woman flowers, and it's multiple flowers. All Eric needed was one.
Well, that's
like
okay.
I mean, I kind of viewed it like that.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of different perspectives in with this movie, and to tell you the truth, like I don't want to like skip ahead too far, but it's probably like my biggest beef is that there's a lot of, like how in Blair Witch Project it's a lot of tell and don't show. I feel like there's a lot of show and don't tell enough in The Crow.
Well, I kind of feel like I feel like Alex Proyas, the director, and James O'Barr they were smart enough to realize that our audience isn't dumb. They're going to easily pick up that this crow is dictating where he needs to go without having somebody spoon feed us exposition. Like, I think we're able to piece together what's going on, especially with the narration in the very beginning about sometimes, just sometimes, the crow can bring that spirit back to put the wrong things right. So it's like, okay, keep that in the back of your mind, because something's going to play out that's going to dictate how this story is going to progress.
Yeah, you're right, John. And I heard James O'Barr in an interview say that he thought that, you didn't need characters, like the Skull Cowboy in there. Because originally the Skull Cowboy was basically going to be the voice of the Crow.
Pretty much, yes.
And he also said he wasn't too crazy about the look of the Skull Cowboy. He said he just looked stupid. He was just covered in rubber. Like, I remember seeing pictures of the Skull Cowboy, and I thought he looked really cool. And I wanted to know more about him. Yeah. And O'Barr made a good point, and he said, but Michael Berryman was the actor.
Yeah.
And if you know who Michael Berryman is, he's like one of the main guys from The Hills Have Eyes, and he has this very unique looking facial feature to himself. And he's like, why would you take a guy who's so unique looking like that and just cover him the fuck up?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a good point, because I was like, yeah, you know what? You're right. Yeah. I mean, if you got Michael Berryman, you might as well use him because he's so distinct looking. But I met Michael Berryman, and he was actually, no matter what, he was thrilled to be a part of the movie. I remember him saying there's only one Crow movie.
Yeah.
We had a long conversation, but I'll get into that later, like after we're done talking about the movie itself. But oh, go ahead, Jeff.
I was gonna say, when John was talking about the flowers, you were saying about the multiples to Shelley and one to Eric. If you think about it, she viewed Shelley as a mother figure because she didn't have one, and that's probably what that was.
Well, she kind of did have one, but she sucks.
Well,
that's what Jeff's saying.
But yeah.
And if that's what you view it as, like, you're not going to catch that on the first watch through. It was years of watching it, and then it made me realize that's what that was. It wasn't that like she liked her more. It was she viewed her as her mom, and Eric was more of her dad. Like, even with our parents, the same thing happens. Like, you're going to do more for your mother than you are your father. You might have a great relationship with your dad, but your mom's your mom, and you kind of already have that bond that's already bigger than with your dad.
Yeah, it's made present in the flashbacks too. Like you don't really see flashbacks with Sarah and Eric together. You really just see Sarah and Shelley together. Like even they're dictating that. Yeah. So I was wondering. I'm sure they were great together when they were all alive, but it just felt like, yeah, like the mother figure. That definitely I can see that for sure. But I don't know. I guess like when you're a child with good parents, I figure maybe the love would be equal, or you'd spend more time equally. But it could be just like the daughter mother
The bond.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah, I see what you guys are both saying. And I think that's the beauty of it. Like there's a lot of interpretation that you can take from it.
Mhm.
But going back to like the show and not telling enough, you think that way. You know, is it because she didn't really have a good relationship with Eric, or is it just one of those like, yeah, Eric, I didn't forget about you, you know? So here's a flower. But I also had a problem where it really wasn't explained that he loses his powers at times. I didn't. I didn't.
Well, there's
Like at one,
very
like
brief.
after the fun boy death scene, you see him having like electrical tape wrapped around his torso and his forearms and wrists. It's like, what's that all about? And here his weakness was, if you helped a mortal and strayed away from your mission, you lost your powers temporarily. And James O'Barr said he didn't like that. He actually said that it was too Hollywood, that you needed something that was very vulnerable. And he was like, I just wasn't a fan of that idea at all.
Mhm.
But because I remember for the longest time, I was like, why does he have electrical tape wrapped around him? And it actually was Jeff who told me about things like the Skull Cowboy and the losing the. I think it was you, or maybe it was
I
actually one of
remember
my
I remember
guitar teachers
losing the
telling me
powers,
about that.
but it wasn't. I didn't talk about the Skull Cowboy until much later. So yeah, it was probably one of your teachers.
Because I also remember it was actually in the third movie when the what's his name, Eric Mabius played the Crow character.
Uh-huh.
He thinks his mission's done, and just by him thinking that, he was vulnerable.
Hmm.
And supposedly it was this lore that, yeah, it was supposed to continue. Yeah, that's why he like dies. But then when he finds out that the people who were killing him still had a hand in killing his girlfriend or
Well,
fiance,
that's
you know,
the
because they were wash,
sequelitis.
rinse, repeat.
Yeah,
Then all of a sudden it
sequelitis.
was like it was like they tried to clarify things that they didn't clarify before.
Yeah, I know
Movie.
they try to drag some other ideas from the first movie into the other sequels. Like I know Eric Draven in the comics was a mechanic, so they made
Yes.
Ash a mechanic in the sequel, City of Angels.
James O'Barr didn't like that either. He wanted him to be a mechanic to feel like he was a regular guy. Like he wanted everything to feel like these were just regular people that, yeah, it was like wrong place, wrong time. But when Top Dollar says to Eric at the very end of the movie that he was doing this to like get a real estate deal because he says, I cleared that building, you know,
yeah,
it was like he made it seem like it was personal and it was made to happen no matter what. When in the comic books, I think they have a flat tire, Eric and Shelley, and the guys in the gang are smoking crack, just riding around and are like, hey, let's kill these people.
yeah.
That's literally how it happens.
I never read it, but eventually I'll have to read the original graphic novel by him.
I'd let you borrow it, but James O'Barr signed it for me, and
You don't want to have it
fuck
with
you.
it. Just gonna skip from A to Z right there.
Hey,
Yeah, fuck you. Usually that's my job.
Seriously, man.
Jeff was with me when we met James O'Barr.
I wasn't twisting your arm to get the graphic novel. I was just saying I'll have to read it sometime. Maybe I'll just go out and get it myself. So fuck you, man.
You should and support James O'Barr.
Yeah. But
Honestly, meeting James O'Barr was probably like one of the coolest interactions we had because like it wasn't about the movie, it was about the comic that we were there for. And
I
I
didn't
think he
want to.
enjoyed that
I think he
a little
did too,
more.
especially because the guy in front of me had, or us, I should say, had like nothing but Crow merchandise and was like, "Here, sign this. Here, sign this. Here, sign this."
oh, I know what you're talking about. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and Jeff and I were there asking him, like about the Skull Cowboy and
Yeah.
like the influence with the mask. I said, what was the influence with the mask? Because with I didn't understand what the uniqueness was with the
Tragedy
face
mask.
paint.
Yeah.
But he said that he was in the military, and I think he was over in England. And over there, they have three masks. They have comedy, tragedy, and irony. And the mask that he was inspired by was irony. That's what
Okay.
he saw, and it was the irony of like he's dead, but he's back, and you can't stop him. And then that was like, I'm gonna paint my face with this irony on it. And people came up to him and said, "Were you inspired by Kiss?" And he was like, "No, I don't even like Kiss." And then I think they even said, "Was Alice Cooper an influence to you?" And he was like, "Why are they asking me about Alice Cooper?" And then he looked at me, he was like, "Oh shit." But here Alice Cooper said he was a fan of The Crow and he never gave James O'Barr a hard time. And we met Alice Cooper. I have a hard time seeing him having a would give somebody a hard time, and he loved the movie as well, I think, too. So
I know when he created or drew the character Eric Draven, he was imagining the rock singer Iggy Pop with like that sort of physicality, and they actually were going to put him in the movie as Fun Boy, but his touring schedule wouldn't allow him to commit to the film time, so they went in a different direction. They hired Michael Madsen to play Fun Boy, but that's why Iggy Pop kind of returned to the sequel because he wanted to do by right by James O'Barr for having being thought about. Like, oh, thank you for, and I want to do you right this time by actually committing to being in a Crow film.
And Brandon Lee, you could tell, worked really hard at getting his body to be as accurate as that comic book and that Iggy Pop looking like slender, but like really cut. And
he lost a
like,
lot of weight.
ripped.
He lost
Yeah,
a
they
lot of
said
I think it was 40 pounds, I think.
something like that.
I think so. I think so. I heard him say that I think he was eating a lot of cereal and like a lot of like really like low fat type of stuff. He was already pretty lean to begin with, but you could tell he was just all muscle. And his six pack, like he was just like fucking cut. He looked like somebody who would just kick everybody's ass.
He looked like a comic book character.
He did, without it being like so ostentatious and over the top huge. But I mean, he really looked right like what that character was supposed to be off the page.
Yeah.
And he got to also give him props for working in the hazardous conditions. Like they said that they had electrical issues. It was freezing cold. They said the warmest night, I think, might have been 30 degrees. And then they're having these rain machines. And I think they put ethyl glycate or something in the rain machines to keep them from freezing. And they might have put alcohol in the water to keep Brandon from getting sick. Because if he got sick, then it held up production. The movie was filmed in North Carolina, where it was a little cheaper to film. Also, there were some serious lack in labor law issues, which led to another tragedy.
Yes.
And yeah, there's a lot going on behind the scenes with this movie. Like we'd almost have to do like a two-parter to really cover all this stuff. But I recommend, like, if you want more, check out James O'Barr interviews. I mean, we could probably do a whole episode on James O'Barr himself. I think one of the biggest takeaways, though, that Jeff and I had from meeting him was, I remember saying to him that, I'm very sorry what you went through, but what you did was create a product that could actually save other people, like by having an understanding of dealing with tragedy and how you feel and hearing your story. And it means a lot to others to be inspired and still remember that the message of it is, if you love somebody, they're never really gone.
Yeah.
And he actually like got a big smile on his face, and I remember he extended his hand out and shook our hands, and you could tell he was happy to see us and talk to us, and
Nice,
that made me feel good.
nice. One thing I will say really quickly is that I do not envy the challenges that these filmmakers had to go through. Like you said, Colin, that there were a lot of production issues. They were basically trying to make a $30 million movie with something less than 20. And that's already a problem. And not to mention having a tragedy of Brandon Lee losing his life. And they did a fantastic job trying to mask where Brandon Lee is clearly in the film and when he's not clearly in the film. They didn't rely on this bullshit de-aging technology that we see all over Hollywood right now. They found somebody with a similar body type and long hair and just kept his face in shadow. And it worked
It was
because
a stunt double.
it was a stunt double. And it worked because darkness and rain are characters in this movie, so it made sense as to why you couldn't see his face very clearly. I know during the makeup scene that wasn't Brandon Lee. They used some digital effects when he punched the mirror. It's not him. It's a digital face of Brandon Lee, but it's not him. It's so quick, but you almost can't tell. So that holds up. I know there are some special effects. There's some green screen that looks like you can see the black line in the background. It looks a little noticeable in certain overhead shots and some pan-ins and some zooms, but it's really not that noticeable or distracting when he's not in the film. They were very close to finishing the entire film. They probably had about maybe 15% of the film to finish. And there were doubts that they were even going to release this thing.
I think they said they had a week left of filming.
Okay.
And I remember this is really sad.
This is mostly connecting
There
issue that they were doing to piece together certain shots to coalesce and make a cohesive narrative.
well
But it's not that noticeable.
the story I was going to tell was Brandon Lee's mom was um, in an interview talking about the last conversation she had with him, and I think he was on set.
Yeah.
And he said that he was really happy the movie was almost done. He was really proud of the film, and he said that he was also really excited that the action scenes were all done,
Yes.
except for we'll get into it after we get done talking about the movie. But his mom said that when he hung up, he said, "Bye, Momzo, I love you." And it's really sad that he was like so hyped and was like ready to move on. He was engaged too.
Yeah.
He was, yeah.
We
So
lost him at
he
28
could.
years old. But
That was the biggest fucking gut punch watching the movie, finding out that he died. Like I wanted more of him. I wanted more of that character in the movie. And when like still through as the movie was playing, my cousin said, "Yeah, unfortunately, he died," and I was like, "What?"
what are you talking about? Yeah.
It was like literally like you find somebody who you can say is your favorite actor, or like here's something that you always wanted, and then it gets taken away from you right away.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, I don't envy filmmakers going through that challenge when somebody passes away before a film is complete. I mean, say whatever you want about Rise of Skywalker, but like handling Carrie Fisher's death because she died before the film was made, or Paul Walker dying before Furious 7 came out, it's a challenge. It puts a strain on you and it puts an emotional strain on you. But this happened 25, 30 years before any of those films came out. So the technology isn't quite there. So they had to dig deep and they actually were trying to pioneer certain digital effects to make this work. So
Yeah.
they had to basically dig deep and figure out what can we do to make this as seamless as possible.
And at times, Brandon's stuntman, when he was doing the full costume and makeup look, they actually had a mold of Brandon's face and they overlaid that on the stuntman's face.
Mhm.
And people were kind of like felt like it was surreal and freaky because it was like a lifelike likeness of Brandon.
Mhm.
Also, the excuse me, his stuntman is the director of the John Wick films.
Chad Stileski? Oh shit,
Yep.
I didn't know that.
Yep, look it up.
Huh, I will. Well, I will do that. I know, and the actual reveal of Eric in the makeup with the lightning flashing in the apartment, I know that's also a digital effect. That's not him. That's the stuntman, or maybe that was a digital creation. Like I said, they're so quick because some of these de-aging films that came out, recently, they linger and you can tell it's fake. You can tell it's not really them. It's just AI de-aging your face and it sticks out like a sore thumb. This never stuck out like a sore thumb because of how quick it is and because of how simple and believable everything just feels to be.
Yeah, there are parts where you could tell it was like in its infancy, like when the gunshot wound that he takes at the pawn shop like re-heals, or the hands when you see that.
Yeah.
Or even when he has the hand blown up when he puts his hand to the revolver that Fun Boy has and he says, "Take your shot, Fun Boy."
That
You
was the
gotta be dead
best
bang.
version of that. That looked the best of all of the
Well, he had like a
judgments.
prop hand that was like you could tell was fake in front of him.
Mhm.
And then he turns it around and it heals. It's like, I mean, obviously because it had to show a hole through his hand. but
It looked good though.
but
Practically looked good.
I'll still take the practical effects over stupid shit any day of the
Well,
week.
we all will. I mean, anybody
Yeah.
would for sure.
I mean, honestly, the only time I really noticed the CGI didn't age well was the beginning fires. Because like you could tell it was
Mhm.
digital, and that was the only
Yeah,
time I really noticed it.
that was one of those
But I didn't
shouts.
realize it was that heavily used, like to digitally do the face and stuff. Like I didn't even realize it. So that aged well. It was just the fire that really didn't.
Yeah, like John said, the flickering when you first see the makeup on, that was like they took footage of him already and overlaid it. The John said the mirror, and when they took a shot from him in the alley when he first came out of the grave and put that looking like he was walking through the door into the loft.
That blew me away
Yeah.
because I never pieced that together until last night. I'm like, wow. Because it made sense. Him freezing down the alley as the crow is dictating him where to go, and he's shaking and shivering, so it makes sense. But then when he gets to the loft, he's still shaking and shivering, but it's the same digital effect of him in the alley as he is in the loft. I'm like, I didn't fucking put that together until now. So it fooled me for years until just last night.
And I think James O'Barr said that there's only like a combination of like 6.5 seconds of the digital work to replace Brandon anyway.
Like I said,
So
it's quick. They
there's
don't.
not much. He said Brandon is in this movie like 90% of the time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Besides Brandon, I do want to talk about the other actors in this movie because that was the other thing that struck me.
Yeah.
Jeff Polito, I think that's his name. He was the pawn shop guy. He's always playing like smug,
Gideon.
yeah, these characters that are just slimy grease balls. He was in it and had his like great performance.
David Patrick
Michael
Kelly.
David Patrick Kelly who was
As
T-Bird, who
T-Bird.
was like the leader of the gang that went into the loft and told the guys this is what we got to do here. He was fantastic. You could tell he was like a guy who definitely commanded everything from the troops there and they admired him. But then he had his boss, Top Dollar, who was sleeping with his half sister. Okay.
I can't see the resemblance.
And Tony Todd was Michael Wincott's right hand man, Grange, who
Yeah.
was basically
Which,
like an assistant in a way, who said like, well, if Top Dollar's not here, you come to me.
yeah. And that's another thing I always forget. They never mention those guys by name. The
Yeah,
three main
Grange,
villains.
Top
Yeah.
Dollar, and the sister
Micah.
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 Yeah.
They never mention them by name, but
And that's another thing I mean. It's like too much show, don't tell. I'm like, I was literally like,
I would have appreciated learning their names. I would have liked that. That's if I had one criticism, it's not knowing their names or not knowing maybe a little bit more about them. That's it. So, but I do like, David Patrick Kelly's performance as T-Bird. I mean, he's definitely the one that you want to see it get the most because he's the ringleader of that circus of clowns that he basically works with, carrying out the orders to burn the city down during Devil's Night and what have you will.
the bad
Really? I
guys
thought it was gonna
definitely
be
have
Fun
some.
Boy.
What's that?
I was like, really? I wanted it to be Fun Boy. Fuck
You
that
want-
guy.
Well, no, well, fuck all four of them. They're awful. Like every single one of them, they're terrible people. But
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I guess because he was kind of like the smooth talker of the four of them, and he was the one that basically carried in the eviction notice, and he was carrying out or having the commanding presence during those horrific flashback sequences. Him mocking Shelley, getting in her face, and it was almost my favorite scene where he is the first one of the group to actually recognize, I know you. I knew you. I knew you. He's like practically begging for his life, thinking, this isn't possible. This isn't real, man. You're fucking dead. And he's just taping his body to the chair.
Hold on here. You're an actor. You're doing the I knew you. I knew you. But you forgot the best part of that performance. When he goes, but you ain't you.
But you can't be. We put you through the window.
Through the window. There ain't no coming back. And he's all like in shock. He goes from like that. I knew you to.
Yeah, and he actually, I'm like, oh, you
like what am I doing? Like, what is going on here? That was great.
Yeah, it's a great performance, but I'm like, don't you fucking
cry. Yeah, it was.
Don't you fucking cry. He's like, abash the devil's son, felt awful goodness. I'm like, don't you fucking cry, man. Don't you fucking do it.
Yeah, and Brandon just ties him to the seat of his car, that hot rod that he has.
There was like one little editing error because like he drops the bomb or the explosive device on his lap, and then he pulls the gear shift and his hand is out of the car because that car would have like taken him with him as soon as he put that thing in motion because it just started going. But his whole body's out of the car. He's just like, bye-bye.
Apparently, when the car goes off and Brandon does the bye-bye, that's a little nod to the Warriors that David Patrick Kelly does.
Oh, okay.
Because he was in Walter Hill's The Warriors. He's David Patrick Kelly's the guy who does the famous Warriors come out to play. Yeah. That's who does that.
Yeah.
But Brandon Lee's favorite movie was The Warriors. That's the other reason he put it in there.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I read that this morning while I was out, and I'm like, that's actually really cool, and it makes sense why they did what they did with certain things then. But like, if you look at that whole sequence of like him remembering, it's like it was almost the predator becoming the prey at that moment, and you realize you fucked up bad.
And there's no getting out of it. Yeah. He knew he was done. There's no negotiating, no nothing. Like, because in the car he was even like, what the fuck are you supposed to be, man? And Eric goes, I'm your passenger. Like it's all fun and games, and then until he finally recognized him and he's like, a ghost is actually gonna kill me. Like, no way.
Yeah.
And then Skank later on realizes it too. And when he's trying to explain it to Top Dollar, and he sees a picture of him because Eric's band played at the club. Because he's not a mechanic, he's a rock musician, and he played at the club that the guys who killed him owned. Yeah. Skank in the group's like, that's him, but he looked different. He was all painted up like some white dead whore. I've seen it.
Now, I will say though, actually thinking back about the killing spree when he starts taking out Tintin, Fun Boy, T-Bird, and Skank, I keep thinking.
Sorry, those fucking names.
Yeah, I know.
I know. Like, I fucking, like, it was a great revenge moment where he kills T-Bird, the ringleader of the circus, but I can't help but think Skank was the most annoying. I'm like, oh, God, please kill him.
Yo, but he had the best lines. What's your name, Skank? You don't feel this? I feel like a little worm on a big fucking hook.
He did have some of the best lines, for sure, as, like, the annoying side character, but he, like, is... he's kind of funny, but not really. It's like
Oh
he's
yeah, he's that guy you don't want to laugh at his stupid shit because he's such a bad guy. But even
right.
Top Dollar says, "Oh, you feel like a little worm on a big fucking hook." Well, boy, your mama must be damn proud of you.
Oh yeah, but car chase I thought was actually I think they use miniatures or like some kind of miniatures for the car chase
Yeah,
sequences
it was
because
mostly miniatures. Yeah,
yeah, but I mean there are definitely shots of them driving a car. But I didn't realize how minimalist that whole chase sequence was.
I thought at one point there's an alternate scene where it looked like Eric Draven's actually on top of the car.
Hmm.
But there was James O'Barr had said this before that he wants a director's cut of this movie out, and they said it would take like $500,000 to redo the footage and like another 25 to 75 to like redo the audio and bring back everything that they wanted to have in. But he said, I think it's bullshit that they're using that as an excuse because of the first day they'll probably going to make that back anyway, which is true.
Oh, absolutely.
They would.
Yeah, he said, you know, they give you all these sequels and other merch and shove down your throat for years. Why can't they give you something that you want?
This movie has a massive following. I'm sure if they did like a Kickstarter campaign tomorrow, it would start to raise that money in a heartbeat.
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It might be rights issues. I know Paramount owns it currently, but I don't know what company owned it before.
Well, it was
Paramount,
I think that
Paramount
started it.
originally owned it.
They originally owned it.
And then when Brandon
Miramax.
was killed, they wanted nothing to do with it. And then Dimension Films got it.
Yeah.
Now that things have flip flopped exactly, I don't know. And with the Weinstein issues, I don't know how Miramax and Dimension Films are being run now.
Well, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, Harvey
That's weird.
Weinstein had a
Yeah.
say in the sequels, that's for sure. And the other parts of I think it was maybe it was his decision about no, that's not. It's not.
I don't even want to talk about
I don't
this.
want to talk about it. I really don't want to talk about it. So yeah, that's why I stopped myself. I'm like, nope, not getting in there. Fuck him.
Another actor we didn't talk about yet was Ernie Hudson, who
Yeah.
was
Dude, he has a standout performance. And
yep.
I don't think he gets enough credit for this movie. Like, yeah, he's known for Ghostbusters, but this movie I think is a standout performance for him. Like being that caring, nurturing person to what's her Sarah? I cannot remember her names right now. I'm sorry.
Yep.
And like being that father figure that she didn't have was actually really nice. Having that conversation at the hot dog stand, him taking care of her, and then even the conversation he has with Eric in the house where he's just wearing the police hat
And the
and
underwear.
I'm like, yeah, and I'm like, dude, you're gonna talk to a dead man just in your underwear.
Oh my
and your
god.
hat, and you still have your hat on.
I am so glad that is I don't know if that was an improv line or that was a line of script. I'm like, please somebody say something about him being half naked and why the hell is your hat still on your head? I'm like, somebody acknowledges. I'm like, oh, thank you, Brandon Lee, for acknowledging that because that's just ridiculous.
I think it's just part of that comedic relief, you know, like how Skank sometimes has some funny lines and it just breaks that moment of levity because it gets really deep anyway. You know, you have a funny moment and then, you know, Ernie Hudson says, you know, like, what are you, some kind of ghost? And Eric just goes, boo. But he cracks open a beer for him and hands it to him. And he's like, I don't know what I am, but I need you to tell me fully what happened. And he runs through the details and Eric's just horrified. And he said, hey, you asked, man. Here's the file.
Yeah.
And he said, I tried to save her and do the best I could. And then Eric can like see and feel Shelley's pain through what he witnessed.
Yeah.
And he said, you stayed with her the whole time. And he was like, yeah, I really wanted her to pull through. And maybe she could have helped me, like, because he was a cop, you know, he was like, I feel like I could have worked with her too. And we could have gotten somewhere and protected the city more.
And that was more motivation for his character, especially towards the end. It really does play out in the very end too, like just the fact that he was there the whole time and he was able to use that visual aid, that flashback, to aid in his quest and for him to keep going to get the revenge that he needed and to set things right.
Yeah, he was like
Hudson.
Ernie Hudson was like a undercover guardian for Eric in a way.
Yeah.
That he helped guide him as well. He filled him in on everything that he wasn't fully privy to from his flashbacks and what the Crow could provide. So it was, and Eric like realized that he was more than just a cop. He was a good person because of
Yeah.
the conversation they had, and that he stayed with Shelly the
Mhm.
whole time in the hospital. That's why he was like, "You stayed with her the whole time?"
Yeah, and
Because Eric was dead. Shelly had nobody.
no, she didn't. Yeah. I mean, it can go back to the idea that, hey, I've been a street cop for years. I've seen a lot of terrible people in this city. And you three, Eric, Shelley, and Sarah, you're like the three people that kind of give me hope that there are more people out there in the city like you that are worth protecting and defending, because I've seen some shit and there's a lot of terrible people in the city, but not you three. So kind of like the Wayne family in Gotham City.
Yeah, kind of.
So but I do like going back to Gideon. He does have some pretty good lines in the movie. I got stabbed. I shot the son of a bitch.
And then on top of it, my business gets blown up real good.
Other than that, my day sucked. There was like one little continuity error where it's like Tony Todd was pouring him the whiskey in the glass. He poured him a little bit, and then like one shot, it's like almost half full. So that the continuity didn't quite add up on like the glass pouring after his business just blew up. That was just one thing I noticed. There was one I'll get to later, but I did like the Gideon and Eric Draven interaction in the pawn shop. Mr. Gideon, not paying attention. Smacked him in the face with the bat. I think he actually cut his hand on prop glass.
Yeah, he's smashing it.
Yeah, with Brandon Lee was like, that doesn't normally happen when people, because it's usually made of sugar. Yeah, because prop glass is made of sugar, so people don't get hurt when their face or their hands or body parts go through it. But he actually cut himself for real, like in that scene. They're just that's unusual. So it's kind of like the idea that people still say this movie was cursed. That it was just one bad thing after another.
That's also the scene where Brandon quotes the Raven line when he breaks into the pawn shop.
Suddenly, I heard a tapping, as if someone gently rapping at my chamber door.
I mean, but did he really break into the pawn shop? Was it Tintin didn't actually lock the door? He just shut it and put it through, but never actually locked it.
No, I think Brandon Lee was so strong he ripped the lock right off and opened it.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought he did. I thought he does lock it.
He did lock it.
Oh, I remember him shutting it, but I don't remember. I saw he threw the padlock through it, but never shut it.
He
says that line, "I'll close it up real good."
But honestly, that was actually a really impactful scene when he's looking for Shelly's ring, and then like he takes the whole box and just starts throwing them at him and going, each of these are a life that you ruined. And I'm like, never would have even thought about it because of his clientele. And after Eric said that, yeah.
Tintin kills people and gives them the belongings to sell at the pawn shop for money.
And then when he tries to talk shit to him after he poured the gasoline, and Eric just looks over at him and goes, "Is that gasoline I smell?" And the dude's
man.
like, "No." And then he blows the place up.
That's a great visual of the shotgun blast and the rings coming out like pellets shooting out of the shotgun barrel and the whole building blowing up.
But that made it more impactful too. The fact that he filled the shotgun with those wedding rings to shoot back
people that died to be like, boom, fuck you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really cool.
And then apparently that was a dummy of Eric standing outside of the pawn shop with all the costume on. And that's why the fire could just come back and hit him in the face.
Engulf him like, yeah, that's definitely a dummy. I mean, that was great.
But it looks so cool. Like he's just standing there like he doesn't care. And then it just boom, washes
I can't
over.
get hurt.
It's a great visual. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, it's great.
No, Alex Proyas was known for having like nice visuals, and he was like a real perfectionist, and he knew what he wanted. And I think James O'Barr had even said that I think they wanted to like really change what this movie was supposed to be. Like they didn't want they didn't want Eric to wear makeup. They wanted it to be like zombies more involved. It was really fucking weird. And he's like, why do you Hollywood guys got to change the source material so much that it doesn't even resemble what it originally is anymore? And it wasn't until Alex Proyas and Brandon Lee got involved where they said, we want to do this and we want to do that, where it just kind of was like, okay, we're staying in this lane. And
Yeah, in the wrong hands, this could have looked horrible. This
yeah.
could be a
Oh, yeah.
horrible movie.
Well, I think James O'Barr was involved with it too. And he even said, I'm very happy with the movie. It's not exactly what I envisioned. I have my issues with it, but I am proud of it.
Yeah.
And he should be, because it's very rare that right off the bat does a movie ever like have an impact initially the way it does. I mean, we've seen how many comic book movies now that are just absolute trash when they first come out.
This was classified as the first rated R comic book movie too.
Yeah, and they said that they actually went through the MPAA multiple times. It was getting an X rating, and the MPAA was also very stingy because of dealing with Brandon Lee's death.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it was costing them money because it costs like, I don't know, like $5,000 every time you got to submit or something like that. And they don't even tell you what you got to take out. You're just kind of like, they just kind of give you like little notes, and you're just kind of like, well,
They give you very
maybe
little notes.
cut this, cut that.
Right.
And they said, like, besides the language, you probably, like, you take the foul language out, it probably could get a PG-13.
I mean, truthfully, they don't show a lot of the killing, so it does make sense.
Mhm. Well, there's the
And
massive
it's
count that happens in the shootout sequence above the concert. There's a lot of people that get whacked in that scene.
But they don't
It was
show
awesome.
like brains exploding, like just shows a little bit
No.
of blood coming
Yeah.
out.
There's one guy
Like,
that got his throat slashed by a knife. There's that.
There's an
But they didn't
alternate take where you
focus
see the
on it.
dude losing a hand, and he's like, ah.
Oh my
But
god.
obviously wasn't in the movie.
It could have been worse. They could have actually showed like everything, and then it would have been deserving of that X rating. This was really toned down for as violent as the movie is. It is toned down. Like I said, the language is what overtook it, which makes sense because like you can't use a certain amount of foul language because of uncouth, I guess. Because I say fuck a lot, and I understood the amount of fucks they used was okay, but to the common watcher, they're gonna be like, "Oh, this is really not my cup of tea because too much foul language." But once you get past that, the context of the movie, yeah, there's really nothing bad in it. Like, yeah, there's drug use, there's alcohol. The violence is, like I said, a lot more toned down. You don't get to see it as prevalent as you would, let's say, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Any action movie that came out, like any Arnold movie, any Stallone movie, they were super violent and they showed it. So being in the same realm as that, yeah, this is quite toned down. But
There's
yeah, they
brief
showed a little
nudity,
bit.
too.
Yeah,
Very brief nudity. Like they could have easily cut that out too.
Yeah,
that was
It was a
dead
second
the
long.
side boob.
It was like 2
That
seconds
was
long.
side boob.
So,
Oh my gosh.
but yeah. But speaking of that, that shootout sequence above the concert, that like fucking just gets my blood pumping, and that's when you can actually really go aside from Brandon Lee's dark comedic chops and his acting abilities, and this sequence showcases his physical abilities, where he's doing kip ups, he's doing punches and stunt work, and basically getting hands on with guns, swords, physicality, all of it. I mean, was it him doing the flips? It's such a cool visual moment with like
Yeah,
in the background.
he did a handful of his own stuff, and he even choreographed that with the other stunt coordinator who's a friend of his.
Okay.
And the stunt coordinator is actually in that scene. He's one of the guys at the table.
Okay.
And
Oh, wow.
I think his name's John Cho, who helped write the script. I think he's in the scene as well. He's one of the guys that you see gets dragged under the table right away.
Oh, okay. James O'Barr's in the movie too.
Yeah, James O'Barr's one of the guys who
homeless
takes the
people looting
TV.
the pawn shop.
Yeah, when the pawn shop blows up, James O'Barr takes the TV.
Yeah.
And he was like,
I forgot about that.
He was like, yeah, that TV was really hot too.
Yeah. Yeah, and broken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, just like the rock music kicking on in the background, and then like Top Dollar has like that really cool speech about anarchy, that like something the Joker would be proud of. But then that just leads to that, like, nice outfit. Not sure about the face though. He just wants Skank. Oh, you can't have him. But I know like a lot of people have actually told me their favorite line is when he actually says, "I see you've made your decision. Now let's see you enforce it." Like that line, of all the lines in this movie that are so quotable, people I talk to tend to draw to that one because that's when he just gets shot to hell. And then, ooh, that had to hurt. And then the fight sequence ensues. It's so fucking cool. And there is one noticeable ADR moment because before that car chase sequence happens with T-Bird, there's a cop who throws the coffee out the car saying, "What the crap?"
What the crap?
And then when
with the cop who kind of looks like Charles Barkley.
a little bit, yeah. And then when Skank is thrown out the window and he does a face plant on the cop car, you hear another cop saying, "What the
What
crap?"
the crap?
Just like, did you ADR'd that in, didn't you? That was probably like another take during that sequence. You just ADR'd that moment because it didn't look like the cop was actually saying anything. He was just like,
Well, he also had an
crap.
overhead shot where you didn't see his lips moving.
I know, but I could tell, I'm like, that's definitely ADR.
It might have been like one of those running jokes they threw in there, like this cop just said, "What the crap? Let's use it again later."
Like,
Yeah,
who
who's
says
it was
what
more
this
intense.
crap?
This dude's even having coffee spilled on him. Now his car's getting destroyed. It's just
know.
a cop that has a bad day.
And now,
Not a good day to be a
the
bad
goon
guy,
just
huh,
face
Skank?
plants on his squad car. He's like, "What the crap?"
And of course, I say this all the time, but one of the things that always makes a movie great is the final fight scene on a rooftop.
While it's
Oh
raining.
yeah.
Also, in a church.
On top of a church, in the church.
Yes, in a church, on top of the church, like Batman.
Batman.
He was in a cathedral, and then he goes to the top, has a final showdown there. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was in a church, but it was on a rooftop. And the Crow in the church and on top of the rooftop. You gotta have that final fight on a rooftop.
That epic, like over the top.
You got to do it in the first movie, at least.
Very dark, gothic church while it's storming outside.
And it's symbolic because it's a church. It's symbolic because it's that good versus evil resurrection of Jesus Christ. Somebody who's resurrected because of somebody he loves. Jesus died for us. The final fight in a church. Can't get any better than that.
Yeah. And you also, Eric Draven was very passive in this confrontation scene because it's Ernie Hudson that's doing a lot of the fighting or shooting at the other guys. And he's just trying to get out of cover because there's a moment in the car where they realize the sister is a psychic or clairvoyant, and she knows that wherever this crow is around him, what if we took that away from him, and that could possibly be our link to killing him. So they actually shoot the crow, and it actually weakens him. So he is like taking on that religious figure, like trying to be very passive. You can have me, I won't fight you. Just give me the girl and let me go my way.
That's the reason why he completes his mission, but the Grange and Micah and Top Dollar kidnap Sarah because they want to get Eric for destroying their party, destroying Devil's Night for him.
But the mission's not done because he was under the impression that when I killed Skank, I'm coming home, Shelly. I'm going home to you now. But he's not going home. He's like sitting by the gravesite thinking, why isn't this working? Why am I not at rest? Because Top Dollar is involved and basically is the head of the snake, and he's the one that gave the say-so. So if there's one person to kill, it's him.
And he doesn't know it until the very end when he's completely vulnerable and mortally wounded now.
Mm-hmm.
And then Top Dollar again, like lays it all out and just says, this was all my doing. And then that's when everything just comes back to Eric. and he ends him. And it was so awesome how he ended him. He was able to take all the pain that Shelley felt for the 13 hours that she suffered in the hospital and just transferred it all to him. And it was
30
like, yeah, fuck
hours.
you for that. Yeah,
30
what was
hours
it?
of pain.
40 hours?
30 hours of pain.
30 hours.
All at once.
Oh, it was great.
All
Whenever I
for
hear
you.
and whenever like look, I'm one of those people that if like you attack kids and you attack women, whether it's fictional or not, you deserve every fucking terrible thing that happens to you. Call me a bad person that I don't feel any empathy for somebody like that, but fuck them. You know, like they raped and killed this woman. Who knows how many other people that they did in this movie? People like that are pieces of shit.
He's a sadist.
And they deserved every fucking ounce of pain that they got for.
Yeah, like he's
I
preying
can't
on
stand
people
that shit.
involved in the city. Yeah.
Tell you the truth, I think this is like the movie introduced me to like what rape and like what brutally attacks on women are like, and when you see what it is, and it just like turned me off. Like, what the hell? Like people do that?
Savagery,
Like
misogyny.
it like I didn't like that scene where the psychiatrist gets attacked in The Sopranos. I'm like, and then she has that dream sequence where her attacker gets attacked by a dog. I'm like, yeah, I hope the dog rips this dude's balls off. So I'm like, good. You know, and that to like say, like, here's everything that she felt all together, all at once, all for you. It's like, yeah, he deserved every fucking second of that.
Dropped him off and gets impaled by a gargoyle.
The only thing that I think that he deserved more was to feel every other victim.
Yeah.
That's the piece of shit that character is. And that's why
he
you're
is.
really rooting for Eric at the end.
Of course. He's a guy with power. You can even see it like in his home. Like he lives like in this luxurious penthouse, like overlooking on top of everybody down below him, preying on people. I got money, I got power, I can do whatever the hell I want.
He's abusive. He's a psychopath. Oh, and I found this out too, because Ernie Hudson comes back and helps Eric in this whole situation, and he gets wounded.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, Ernie Hudson quit smoking before the movie.
Okay.
And they said that, and he said, "I'll agree to smoking for the character as long as he says I quit smoking at the end of the movie." That's why when he says I need a cigarette, they hand him one and he spits it out and he goes, "I'm quitting as of now if I live."
Speaking
so
of that scene,
so that was the promise.
speaking of that scene, I was alluding to this earlier, but there is, I never noticed this, but it is kind of funny. There is a shell casing stuck in Eric Draven's hair. it's I was like, holy shit, is that a shell casing? Yeah,
we'll see it more now in 4K when it comes out.
Prop department, can we correct that?
Or did he put that in there?
I don't think he put it in there. I think that was an error. It's like tucked to the back on the right side of his head, and it's that moment where he's saying, "You helped me. What you kept in here saved me." As I was alluding to, with him looking into Ernie Hudson's mind and the visual effects and the flashbacks, that line has so much impact of him trying to progress and move forward because of the memory of Shelley being kept in his mind. But yeah, there was a burning shell casing in his hair. It's kind of funny. It is.
I love how the movie ends.
Yes.
It's really great how he's officially tired. It's like he is exhausted. Everything's being drained from him. And he leans up against Shelley's tombstone, just calling her name. And then Graham Revol's music starts playing, this beautiful melody, this soft, you know, like easy, like it eases you into this scene.
Yeah.
And it's like very sympathetic. And what do you see? You see Shelley coming back in, and she's in white, and she looks very elegant. She looks very beautiful. She looks very angelic. And she just walks over and goes to Eric, and she's like, "We can be together again.
We can go home now."
Yeah.
One
and they kiss. Oh God, I love it. I love it.
And then he's
Love
there
it.
to rest, and his story is complete. The story is complete. The crow rescues the ring, gives it back to Sarah, and great little voiceover at the very end, and just the crow taking off in the distance, hopefully maybe to find somebody else.
Yeah.
Maybe to resurrect another person who's been wronged. And then of course the film is dedicated to Brandon and Eliza.
That's his fiance.
Yes. I almost completely forgot about this. When the movie begins, you don't even get the studio credit or like the producer lines. The first thing you see when the movie starts, it says Brandon Lee, the Crow.
They thought
Right
it
off
would
the
be.
bat, this is for him.
They thought it would be disrespectful to Brandon. They wanted you to know that this is Brandon's movie.
Yes.
And that was the way they were going to keep it. So they just kept it very simple. Just Brandon Lee, the Crow, right into the movie.
That's perfect. I mean, that shows how personal, how much he really meant to everybody involved in this film.
Oh yeah. James O'Barr said he was like a little brother to him. He really cared about him.
Yeah.
I met Ernie Hudson in 2011, and at that time people were still, Ernie was like more promoting Ghostbusters, but actually everybody from the Crow was there, like Rochelle Davis, all the goons. Michael
Tony
Wincott
Todd,
wasn't
I'm sure, was
there.
there too.
Tony Todd was there. Oh yeah, he was making bank. I saw his line. Him and Ernie Hudson were
Oh yeah.
they were rolling, man.
They're buddies. They I think they hang out like all the time when they go to these cons and everything in between. But yeah.
But I remember bumping into some friends there, and I said, "Yeah, I'm waiting in line to meet Ernie," who, by the way, I cannot say enough nice things about Ernie. I mean, he was just absolutely incredible. I mean, he's probably one of the best human beings I've ever met. I mean, Ernie's just awesome. He's just really, really awesome. And I don't know if it's the way that I talk or how I present myself, but like friends said, like ask him about Ghostbusters 3. Look, if it's not on the internet, I'm sure we weren't going to know. So I'm not even going to bother with that. I talked to him a little bit about Ghostbusters and said, hey, it looked like that was a great time. And to be a part of that franchise must have been so much fun to be around all those guys and create something like that. But I said, I'd really like to know about Brandon because he struck me as an incredible person, and there's not enough of his life really to follow and not enough biography on him. And Ernie opened up to me. Like he was telling me like that they knew each other before they even did the movie because Ernie lost his dad at a young age. And he basically just said at the end of the day that Brandon was a great guy. And he really meant it. And I said, for you to say that and to give him high praise, it means everything.
Yeah.
And Ernie like made sure that we got a picture together, and he shook my hand, and you could tell he was like, it was like a real genuine, like, hey, thank you for coming. And I was like, hey, thank you for this opportunity. So
thank you.
It was really,
you are.
yeah, it was really cool. I just really like that story, and I like telling it. And it shows class that Ernie has.
Yeah.
So, some little trivia before we get into some other stuff I wanted to talk about. Skull Cowboy, it wasn't in the movie. He represented death. There were some scenes in the movie that were shot, but they weren't used. They were cut. Michael Berryman even said that they were getting ready to shoot a couple other scenes, but then Brandon had passed away, so they never even completed filming the remainder of the Skull Cowboy stuff, which obviously was okay with James O'Barr. He was basically the voice of the Crow.
Yeah.
And I could be wrong. I think what happened was the Skull Cowboy was supposed to be a person like the Crow, where he came back for revenge, but instead of going back, he stayed. But instead of completing his mission, everything about him just started to decay, and that's why he was what he was. Because there's an alternate scene where he says to Brandon, don't go into the church, your mission's done, and if you stay here and you do this, you won't be able to go back and you'll be alone. And Eric says, I'm already alone. And he realized that saving Sarah was a priority over getting back with Shelley.
Gotcha.
And from what I heard, I think Brandon was also signed to a 3-picture deal. So maybe he was going to be like the Skull Cowboy in sequels had he survived.
It could have gone, yeah.
I'm not sure. I asked Michael Berryman about that, and he didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, when the studios usually present these 3-picture deals, these contracts, they have no idea what the future is going to be like. It's just like a security blanket. Like,
Probably
we want to hold on to these actors, but we don't know what we're going to do with you yet. But we want to have that security and just keep you retained.
I don't think they even knew that it was going to be a success.
No.
You know, I mean, with if Miramax bought it and put it under the Dimension banner, that's the sister company where it's like the low rent films kind of get in there. And Paramount wanted nothing to do with it because of Brandon dying. And so they were like,
they were going to shelve it.
How is this going to get marketed? You know, here's a movie with a dead guy in it who died during making this film.
Yeah.
I talked about The Mask. Talked about James O'Barr turning a personal tragedy into this love story. We talked about the credits, Devil's Night and Angel's Night.
Yeah.
James O'Barr actually said that the opening scene bothers him because it's basically what happened to Brandon. So, all right, we're just going to explain this now. The tragedy around it, for anybody who doesn't know, is Brandon Lee was accidentally killed on set while filming this movie. And what happened was they were filming the scene where Shelley and Eric were getting attacked and die that night. And the scene where the goons shoot Brandon, what happens is there are 2 bullets that are on set. One is called a dummy bullet and the other is a blank. A dummy bullet is basically a bullet casing shell with the head or the tip, the actual bullet is in it. There's nothing inside the shell casing, but when it's activated by the trigger and the gun, the head does go out, but it can get stuck in the barrel. And that's what happened in this one revolver. The head just went out, got lodged into the barrel of the gun. And then when the blank went in, the powder from the blank ignited and it pushed the dummy head out and it hit Brandon. And that's how he died. Mm-hmm. So it was basically like a long step of having a bullet. It's basically what happened. Yeah. And the sad part is actor Michael Massey, who played Funboy, was the actor who pulled the trigger. Yeah. And he unfortunately had to live with that. They said he was pretty much like depressed the rest of his life. I think he took a year off of filming.
He did.
Michael Berryman told me a story where a reporter actually called him and said, we had a report that Brandon Lee died on set and there's 3 Michaels in the movie. You're one of them. Are you the one that shot and killed Brandon Lee? And he just hung up on him.
Wow.
It messes with your mind. I mean, something like that happening.
Oh, yeah. Michael Berryman even said he was at a convention where somebody was asking him about it. And he said, that was not me. That was Michael Massey. It was an accident. He said, if you got a problem, talk to him, or I forget the intricate details of it. But then Michael Massey was standing right behind him. And he was like, oh, I'm Michael Massey. But Berryman just went over and hugged him.
Yeah.
And like, because Berryman's another one of those big sweethearts with a heart of gold.
Yeah. I know a friend of mine.
I can't talk to you guys enough about, Ernie Hudson and Michael Berryman. They were really great.
A friend of mine, he got a chance to work at a Chicago Comic-Con where he actually got to chauffeur around Michael Matsey, Tony Todd, and Ernie Hudson during the con, after the con, to make sure that everybody was good. Tony and Ernie were living it up, and Michael was he just told me like he was quiet. You almost couldn't even get a word out of him. Like, and that was back in like 2015. It was like a year before he passed away. You could tell that just all those decades later, it still hasn't left him.
Oh, how do you get over
How do
that?
you get over something like that? You can't.
You don't.
Accident or not, I don't think you really do.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm sure there were some assholes out there that were going up to him saying, "You fucking bastard, you killed Brandon." And it's like, it wasn't his fault.
Well,
You
after
know,
the movie came out, like
the lack of labor laws in North Carolina and late night shoots
prop
and
gun safety.
yeah, they weren't doing proper procedures and checking shit the way they should have. And that's
Yeah.
what happened.
Yeah, like honestly, you can blame him, but you can't put all the blame on him. Like, yes, accidents do happen. And like you said, nobody properly checked that gun. And I've heard multiple people check it before even the actors do. Like Bruce Campbell would literally point it at the floor and pull the trigger just to make sure it was empty before using it. So it's like people do try to make sure they're not having anything in the barrel, anything in the chamber, just to make sure that they're okay.
Haul it out,
Mhm.
yell it out as loud as you can to let all cast and crew members know that there is a live gun or there is prop gun, whatever. Just let people know and just escort it out of the vicinity and deal with it. Like there are ways to do this. And of course, the people on set for this movie didn't.
Yeah, and it's just really sad. It's sad that
Yeah.
that negligence is what did it, and we lost a great actor, and it sounds like we even lost a better person from it. And that's the sad part about
Right.
this movie. It's almost like that kind of helped with marketing in a way. It's like, this is Brandon Lee's
Marketing
last
is
film,
Brandon Lee's last film. I mean,
and and they didn't even like the cast and crew and the production company thought about ditching it and not even finishing it.
shelving it.
But
Yeah.
but they reached out to Brandon's fiance, his mom, and his sister, I think, and they all said, "Please finish it," because he was so proud of this movie. He was proud of the story. He was proud of his acting. He was just proud of everything with it.
Yeah.
You know, if you could, please finish it.
Yeah.
And they did.
Honestly, I heard that whole thing actually through Brandon Lee's sister, but it wasn't for a Brandon Lee movie. It was for Enter the Dragon. And during the commercial breaks, they were doing interviews with Bruce Lee's family. And towards the end of the movie, they all of a sudden everyone switched over to Brandon and they were talking about it. And then that was one thing I thought was really cool. Like he was trying to get out of his dad's shadow. And
Mhm.
this was his movie. This movie was supposed to be his big break. And when they all said this, I'm like looking, I'm like, wow, I was not expecting them to like openly just talk about that. And that was probably like 15 years ago. Whatever FX was before it was FX, that's what that was on.
Yeah. Oh, gotcha. Yeah. They have a lot of good inside behind the scene footage in their content.
But yeah, it's cool hearing the family talk about stuff like that, where how proud he was of this movie and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
Because I do want to say that this movie is unique in its own right because this is like the opposite of a slasher villain. You know, when you think about it, like Jason, he dies, he comes back, he's driven by hate. You know, he just has a burning desire to hate and just want to kill everybody who wronged him, made fun of him, killed his mom. This is a character who came back from the dead because he loves somebody and he wants it over with. He just wants to kill those people that he has a burden with and then go back and be resurrected. And this is no different than any other revenge movie, really. I mean, it's,
Well,
you
yeah.
know, Kill Bill's basically The Crow. It's just
Different
told
style.
in a different, yeah, it's just different
Yeah.
style.
This is,
Exactly.
yeah.
But really at the core, and I said this to Michael Berryman, because I think he was the one who said it's actually, and you know, he said, "Oh, it's a good little action movie." I said, "I actually don't view it as that. I think it's actually a love story with action in it."
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he was like, "Yeah."
Mhm.
Because think about it, you love somebody so much that in death, your soul is burdened to the point where you got to do something about what these scumbags did to the person you love the most. and you love that person that much that you were able to get resurrected, come back and kill these motherfuckers.
Yeah. I mean, what sets apart Mother Revenge Stories is that it's really at its core like a gothic sci-fi cyberpunk tale of revenge. I mean, all those elements are interwoven into this visual storytelling that Alex Proyas did really well. I mean, he did other films after this. You know, he did Dark City, I, Robot, and Knowing, and Gods of Egypt. But, you know, he's been doing a lot of short films lately. I've been following his career a little bit on IMDb, and I know he's attached to another project called RUR, Rossum's Universal Robotics, which is a great play. I'd love to see that in a feature-length film. So he definitely sticks to the similar mold that he's been doing throughout his career. A lot of sci-fi driven pieces. And of course, this is his magnum opus, is The Crow.
Yeah, I just want to say a couple more things, then we can start wrapping this up. And I actually saw or heard a quote from Jake the Snake Roberts from WWE Hall of Famer, that he made a good point, and he said, when we're going back to like how The Crow is just the classic revenge story told in a different way, Jake the Snake Roberts said, not many things are brand new these days, we're just reinventing them. That's very true. Like I said, this, Kill Bill is basically The Crow. It's just reinvented. Woman dies, loses her kid that she loved, goes down the list for revenge. They think she's dead, but she's really back out of the coma.
Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to say was that the director says it's Brandon's movie. Everyone finished it for him, and they remember him for it. He's not very keen on the reboot, even though it's funny, like I just said, everything's not really original anymore. We're just reinventing it.
Oh, yeah.
I mentioned that it's basically like the reverse of a slasher, and it's a metaphor for love. Your soul can't be at peace until you have revenge and can be reunited with that person you love. And as I said before, slashers are driven by hate. Hate keeps them from coming back, and there is no end to their hatred. With love, there is an end to the mission, and it's to get it completed and go back to the one you love. So with that being said, I think we're running out of time too. I don't really have a least favorite scene, but my problem is it has a show and tell problem, where it likes to show and not tell as much. Like the villain names, the electrical tape, the temporary loss of power. I think some of that might have been important to let people know what's actually going on. Like you could get away and you can understand something, but I think it would be nice to have that explanation. Like, you think the mission's over, you lose your powers. Because I know Obar said he wasn't too crazy about the Crow was actually the catalyst of holding the power. Because I think he even took it as like when Micah holds the Crow in her arms in the church, she says, "This is all the power you ever had, and now it is mine." He's like, "So what? Now she has the bird, and all of a sudden she has his power?" He's like, "That doesn't make any sense to me." I kind of took it as, "Hey, I can kill this bird at any time, and then you're done." I'm like,
Well,
I thought of it like that.
there's some lines open to interpretation.
Yeah, that's probably my biggest problem. But
yeah, I love the whole film. I have a ton of favorite scenes, and I don't want I've already said I think my favorite scene, if I had to pick one, would either be like getting the revenge on T-Bird, the ringleader of the circus, or it would be the showcase of the gunfight above the concert. Like, I really love those sequences in the church. Like you said, Colin, like, I have no problem with the minimalist and no exposition of. There's very little explaining in this movie, but I would have liked to have seen some explaining about the names of the main villains. That's what I would have liked, and maybe a little bit about them. There are some continuity issues, but I can forgive that for certain things. There was one where after the shootout takes place and Ernie Hudson's driving away in the car, the back seat is covered in blood. I thought, wait a second, I thought you heal. There shouldn't be any blood. But I thought, it's probably the blood of the people he just killed. So I'm willing to overlook that continuity issue. I'm like, okay, that's probably what it is. But yeah, I mean, I have no least favorite scene at all. Just like maybe some minor continuity issues that I have.
Jeff?
Jeff,
Oh, I think I
Jeff,
think we lost him.
did we lose the Jeff?
Yeah.
Is he messaging
Oh,
us?
oh yeah, yeah. His battery just died on his lap.
Oh my god. Is he texting us right now?
look how it
Oh, he's
froze.
gone. Oh no.
Oh.
Oh, did you replace him? Did you take Jeff?
We'll
Ah!
we'll have to like circle back to him in the
We'll
next
circle back.
episode.
Yep, he just said my battery just died. Oh man.
That picture of him frozen there like that's classic. It's like he looks like he's attentive and listening.
I know. It's like, nope, he
no,
just
he's just ignoring us.
his battery literally just died on us. So that's okay. We'll digitally insert him.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
put his face on the crow, maybe.
So yeah, John. I love the whole movie myself.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a bad scene in it, really. I think, like you said, the pacing moves really well. It's really tight. You feel for the characters, and I love the camaraderie. I love the performances. It has aged a bit, which all movies do. I'm not gonna fault it on that. I still remember the first time I saw it, and I'm still charmed by it.
Just
And
some
there's a
green
bunch of
screen
other,
issues.
yeah, there's a bunch of other movies that I like. I mean, Jaws is dated too, but I don't fault it for that either because it still entertains me.
Yeah, it's not as dated as other films. This is one of them. Not as dated.
Yeah, I know it got critically it got great reviews. I remember they said it's the best movie of its time since Batman. It paved the way for movies like Blade and a lot of other darker films that they realized that this dark gothic stuff can work
R-rated
as long as you
films.
tell a story. And then that was the key part. They told a story, they had great acting, and it's a damn shame as to like what actually happened in the movie as far as tragedy goes. I like that it was original to what the arc is. Like I said before about Jake the Snake Roberts, nothing's really original. We just reinvent it, but they did a damn good job reinventing this to tell an amazing story. It was unique. It worked. It was a success at the box office. It's crazy to think it's been 30 years. I heard it's also becoming a movie that should be recommended, that it gets re-released in theaters every Halloween. And it can be a great Halloween movie. It can be a great.
The themes are there. It's not in
Yeah.
your face, but you do realize that it is around Halloween.
And it's an action Halloween movie.
Yeah.
So I definitely think it works for that.
Yeah.
A lot of the imagery is big time in this. I mean, like whenever he killed a victim and he had a crow symbol, like especially when he killed David Patrick Kelly's T-Bird character and he has that crow emblem in the fire. That was so damn cool.
Really cool. Yeah. Carving out Bumboy's chest with the blood and the needles, and then Tintin's blood on the wall and everything. But yeah, it's a lot of it was a trendsetter for a lot of other action movies that have copied off of that. I know some other action films have done similar things. Like, I'm going to leave my mark in fire on the ground. It's like, I think you definitely were inspired by The Crow when you did that.
Yeah.
So this movie was a trendsetter in many ways. I'll just say one last thing. I think the three actors, the biggest what if stories would be James Dean, River Phoenix, and Brandon Lee.
Yes.
They were alive. What if? What if these tragedies didn't befall those three actors? What would their careers look like now?
Yes.
It's the biggest what if story.
I feel like I could have another episode of The Crow because there's actually like so much more we can talk about. And now there's a reboot coming out. Like personally, I think like as far as the movie goes, this is done. I think you don't need any more live action movies. The sequels have pretty much not
Yeah,
been impressive. I think an animated movie that looks more like the comic book would be the way to go.
pretty cool.
Also, I'd be curious as in the more of a Skull Cowboy movie. That's actually why I asked James O'Barr about him,
Yeah.
but I think he was just supposed to be the symbol of death, but I'm still fascinated by that character. And
This
I've
was going to
been
be in black and
about it.
white too, but he was overruled by the studio. But I
Yeah.
would kind of be curious about like an animated black and white uh action thriller romance piece of this kind in animated form,
But
but
it
black and white. That'd be pretty
but
cool.
it worked out so well to have that dreary, like black and white monochrome look and feel to it, where it was modern. It was still pretty much, a modern movie. But then the flashbacks and the loving scenes were like very vibrant and lovely,
Mhm.
warm and inviting. And I was like,
Yeah.
that was smart.
I think City of Angels deserves a deep dive. I mean that's one. There's only one sequel
Yeah.
to talk about. It'd be the one that came right after this one that deserves a deep dive because
I
a
think
lot of crew members from the first one came to work on the second one.
Well, I also think, believe it or not, that the third one can be talked about because I think there's a good movie in there, but it wasn't executed well.
Okay.
And so same with City of Angels. But the problem is they wash, rinse, and repeated, and that was the big issue with those sequels. I'm not even going to talk about Wicked Prayer. I don't even think we should just pretend that one doesn't even
You don't want
exist.
to talk about it
Oh God, it was horrible. It was horrible.
David Borealis?
No,
That's fine. That's fine. We
no.
won't leave Jeff hanging too long. So
Yeah, no, we should sign off
yeah,
soon. I just wanted to say this is the last thing. Everybody, I think this is a movie that you should probably own because
yeah.
it doesn't just hit like the goth community. Like I know merchandise is crazy all over the place, and Hot Topic like Rat was like drowning in Crow merchandise. Like
The
between
makeup is everywhere.
the like hell, I did a Crow costume one time,
Yeah.
and I think it's a great look. It's iconic. It is what it is. It's a badass character, and really, it all comes down to Brandon Lee. Like even James O'Barr will say, like I may have created it, but Brandon Lee gave it life, and it just
Yeah,
sucks really bad that we lost him.
it is. Yeah.
But he lives on through this, and if he gave us at least one thing, because sometimes you can be in 100 movies and only one matters, so maybe this is it. And they say it's better to burn out than fade away anyway.
Yeah.
But this is a great way to remember Brandon and be inspired by others. Have filmmakers of this movie inspire you. Have friends and family that supported everybody the way they did to complete the film. That's also very important. That Brandon was so proud of this, and he let everybody know that after a tragedy happened, that they still finished it. And that is also key.
Mhm.
Because there's a lot of divas and a lot of backstabbing in the business, and for them to do what they did,
Inevitable. Yeah.
it was top notch.
This could have been in the wrong hands, but
Exactly.
it's not.
So, um, to Brandon Lee and his performance, everybody involved with this movie, I actually want to say thank you because this movie played an important part of my life. It's an impactful movie. It's probably easily one of my top 5 favorite movies of all time. And
for me, yeah,
I wish Brandon Lee was still around as well as all his loved ones.
we all do. Yeah,
and fans.
yeah.
But God bless him, and God bless everything that went right with this, and that we continue to talk about it and have this legacy live on.
Yeah.
So with that being said, we shall sign off. This is Colin Peters.
John Rochetter.
And Jeff Manfred. Jeff Manfred's battery died, so he's still with us somewhere. Thank you all once again for listening. Stay safe. Stay crazy.
Hi, this is Jeff Manfred, and when we were doing The Crow, my laptop died, so you get to see my awkward face as you see the whole screen die. But anyway, my favorite scene from The Crow was actually the scene of him going through all the emotion and everything in the penthouse, and you're getting to physically see him relive everything. And it stuck out because of all that. Like, it really well acted. It was actually really beautifully shot, as fucked up as the scene was. But yeah, thanks for listening.
No. Yeah, they're asking me my least favorite. This is how it's gonna be. I mean, I could bitch about a lot because I do, but I'd say honestly, really no least favorite. As I'm like trying to think of it real quick, but yeah, I enjoyed the movie. I'm glad we actually talked about it. I'm still surprised that it's 30. Makes me feel old as fuck, but between the movie itself and the music, it's a fantastic watch. I'd say definitely watch it. If you haven't, there's something wrong with you, but
Please, somebody help me.